recognizing make a contribution on the bill before this Honourable House, the Appropriation Bill, which sets out the government's plan of expenditure and revenue collection for 2020. And Mr. Speaker, I have listened very carefully to most of what has been said in this House over the last 4 days. And sometimes I got a little concerned that members who spoke on the opposite side seem to think that the people of St. Kitts and Nevis have no understanding of what government does and how government functions, and therefore they need to come here and try to bamboozle, as we say, people by their glibness. Talking about all kinds of, in my opinion, extraneous matters, corruption, and all kinds of things, instead of dealing with, to the matter at hand, Mr. Speaker, because it's the same thing you hear all the time. Every time we come into this house, we hear the same rhetoric. So I'm pleased, Mr. Speaker, to give my support to this bill, because I believe that the bill presented speaks to the performance of the government over the past financial year and sets out what it will do in the next year, 2020. That is what budget is about. That's what it's about. You do an assessment of what you have done. And then, having looked at what has happened with the resources that you had and the benefits you're able to give to the people of the country for the ensuing year, give an account of that. You look at whether you've had a surplus or you have a balance or you have a deficit. That is what budget is about. And then you advance from there to say, listen, this is what the government intends to do for the people of the country. That's a simple matter. But setting out those matters requires a certain degree of understanding of what goes on in the matter of governance and government and the fiscal and financial management of the country. It says that those have to be basics to it. And Mr. Speaker, when the mover of the bill spoke, he set out the revenue collected, the expenditure, and he stated that we collected more than we expended. So there is a surplus from last year, from this year, 2019, and will be a surplus, which will go over into the new budget cycle, 2020. And in seeking to put forward the government's position, it says building our future. I'm not going to go back over the programs which have been completed, because all the ministers who have spoken very eloquently and in detail as to what the government has accomplished for and on behalf of the people of this country. You heard of the growth in GDP, the growth and the expansion of the economy. This is what was represented here in this Honourable House by the speakers on the side. But there's nothing worse than when people want and they come with a recitation, and no matter what they hear, they make no adjustment.
Yes.
And not willing to either listen and understand, or maybe they don't understand. I mean, that is not something that we should ignore. Maybe they don't understand because they have never given themselves time to understand. So here in paragraph 137, the move of the bill says, Mr. Speaker, it says, Mr. Speaker, and I'm reading from the budget, the address. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that my team unity administration has done very well in a short space of time. It's about 4.5 years. We are ready to do more to move St. Kitts and Nevis forward. As we look towards building a stronger and safer St. Kitts and Nevis, we commit to provide more support for housing programs. Already, 562 persons have benefited from the first-time homeowners program over the past, it says 5 years, but over the first term of the team unity government, the last part, my insertion. We recognize decent and affordable housing as one of the felt needs of our people, and will continue to create innovative avenues to fulfill this need. Mr. Speaker, I could stop there because one of the important parts of our people is to feel a pride in owning their own place.
Yeah.
And most people will tell you that is the biggest investment that a person will make in his or her lifetime.
Yes.
So here you have a team unity administration focusing on assisting the people of this country to engage in the acquisition of their own homes, making their largest investment so they can feel good about themselves, they can feel pride,
Improve the quality.
holding and owning their own homes,
Yes.
so that they can be comfortable.
Yes.
And the good thing is, as you heard from the Minister of Housing, and we all know, those of us who have seen what has happened, that the houses which have been built under this team unity administration are of good quality. The finish is good, the interior is good, and the people feel good about their owning their own home, and quality home, Mr. Speaker. I have been to some of the areas where these houses have been built. And one of the good things is that they don't look like soldiers in a row. There's some attempt made to make variety, different designs, so that the people can feel, well, listen, they know what is their house.
Yes.
The designs, the layout, and so on, which adds to the attraction of the development areas. It also adds value in the country. And we must not allow any detractor to deter or to change that view that the government has done well in getting our people to feel good about themselves by owning a good quality home. I go on, Mr. Speaker. We recognize decent, and I've read that. To augment our existing housing programs, we will make a further $30 million available to spur housing construction at low-cost interest. You heard the Minister of Labor, of Housing speak about that. And what he's saying is that we have tailored the loans for those houses depending on the size of the loan, the cost of the house, so that the persons who are going to enjoy those houses can afford the interest and therefore can afford the repayment. We don't want a situation, Mr. Speaker, where persons owning houses feel after a while they can't afford. That's the worst thing that could happen to someone. When you can't afford to pay the mortgage for your house. It's an embarrassment. And what we are doing by this policy is to make sure that our people do not feel any embarrassment, but they can pay for the housing and they can enjoy their investment. Talk further, Mr. Speaker, and I'll move on to something else because it says building our future. It says building a stronger and safer St. Kitts and Nevis also requires sustained support for small and medium-sized enterprise development. Mr. Speaker, what is that speaking to? It is speaking to encouraging our people to become involved in business, providing the enabling environment for them to become entrepreneurs. I know we use the words and they sound nice, but what it means is to become involved in their own business. Whatever it is they feel they can do. But it's not just whatever they feel they can do, they get the support from the government through the St. Kitts and Nevis Development Bank. The money is made available there on lending to them. This is not a handout where people who are overnight, in the dead of night, given $50,000, some person going to have a chicken farm and there are no chicken and there are no farm. This is serious business, Mr. Speaker. Because for the money to be made available for the business, there has to be a proposal. It has to go through a process. It has to pass a test. So that we do not have the kind of experience which we had before under the previous administration. Mr. Speaker, so to encourage people to get into businesses, I heard from the opposite side that they will give everything free. Mr. Speaker, that is one of those processes. That is what I heard. What, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, this is a serious matter which we're dealing with, and I'm happy to hear that. But the way they treated this matter, you'd have thought it was something down in the marketplace, where it's just a frivolous expression. This is serious business. And when the government, Team Unity government says, as part of its forward-looking policy, that it will encourage people to become involved in medium-sized enterprise development, we are looking to get all of our young people encouraged, getting them excited about their future, so that they can help to build the country. That is what this policy is about. So for anyone to have said the budget is empty, it's easy to say that because they never took time to read it, because they had their prepared statements. They had their recitations from the time before. So they came and they brought it out and they just stuck to it. I challenge them. I challenge all of them to go back, listen to the tapes of what they said last year and the year before that, and see if there's any variation. Any variation. This is an area in terms of getting people to become involved in small and medium-sized enterprise. The budget says this is an area where we will continue to provide much needed support so that our young persons can be given the opportunity to start new businesses or expand their existing small business. Building on the experience of the Fresh Start program, my government will launch another low-cost financing program. Mr. Speaker, what more can an enterprising young person who has gone through school, who has equipped him or herself through, whether it's through TVET or through academic training, learning a trade or having an idea of what he or she could do to help him or herself to develop in this country? What more encouragement can any government give? Fresh Start, low-cost financing. Low-cost financing. And it's not just giving the financing, but giving them the technical support to get the business up and running. That has been the practice in the last 4.5 years. And that is what we are looking for, and that is what our people need. Our people need to be encouraged to do things which they are capable of doing so that they can feel good about themselves and they can value what they have been encouraged or what they will be encouraged to do. Value it. A lot of times we find that people, well, easy come what? Easy go. There's no need to harness and to manage and to ensure that what you're doing has sustainability. This is what we want. This is the culture we want to change. And we hear, Mr. Speaker, when we go and discuss at regional meetings, whether it's the CSME, CARICOM, or in labor conferences, where a lot is spoken about youth unemployment or youth employment or underemployment or the informal economy or trying to get people involved in the new technology, the new wave of business, decent work. This is what is being thrown out and which is being used to challenge the countries to develop, to make sure that whatever is put forward is done in a way so that it could have sustainability. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that paragraph 137, and when we go on to paragraph 138 and following, that we see the effort which the government is making to establish a framework to encourage our young people to become involved. And it doesn't have to be just young people. It could be persons who are already in business. If they need help, the government's policy is to help them. So here we are looking at the budget for the year. And we are looking at what the government has suggested. You heard from the Minister of Education just now, the kind of investment which the government is making in sporting activities, in the renovation of the schools, the introduction of new approaches to education, the CDB TVET program, which has become so necessary if our people are to continue to compete within the region. We have that responsibility, and we are seeking to ensure that our people are not left out. Because as much as we have signed on to the CARICOM, CSME, and the free movement of people, we find that our people in St. Kitts and Nevis are at a slight disadvantage. We are at a slight disadvantage because we are competing against persons who have been exposed, who have been given the opportunity to acquire their TVET and their CVQs and all of those good things, to make them capable of moving freely within the region. And one of the challenges we've had when we have to discuss these matters is how do we make certain that our people are not displaced? And I'll say this, Mr. Speaker, I have had to, on a number of occasions, stand up and challenge, as it were, trying to put up a defense so that we do not get overrun, even though we are part of the CSME and the free movement of people. The last effort we had to make was to say to the CARICOM that we want a moratorium or derogation on the movement of people who are barbers and domestics and security guards and so on, and people involved in agriculture. Because right here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have people who are capable of doing that. So we have given ourselves and have received, although there was a judicial review at the CCJ, whether or not our St. Kitts and Nevis, having asked for a derogation of 5 years, whether or not our people could benefit from the free movement, just as we are asking for a derogation. We are not worried about that, Mr. Speaker, because it is the intention of this government, and the history in the last 10 or so years has shown that the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, because of the economic activity in our country, that those who want to find work can find work here. The policy of the government to have that initiative of the alternate lifestyle is also to provide that kind of opportunity for persons to create employment for themselves with the support of the government. Notice I said with the support of the government. Because when we hear talk that the government is not doing anything and there's nothing for the young people, what more can the government do than offer opportunity and seek to support that opportunity by putting financing so that the opportunity can be realized? That is good governance. That is how countries are to run. Not to be run by handout. When I heard, I almost got some more gray hairs. I have quite a few, my whole head covered. When I heard that we will give every person in St. Kitts and Nevis 18 years and over a duty-free vehicle, that makes little or no sense.
Makes no sense, you're not serious.
How would this be sustainable? How would that be sustainable, Mr. Speaker?
What do you mean how it could be sustainable?
But everyone can afford to buy a car.
But if you can't afford to buy a car, you ain't got a car.
So that is a catch. So that is a catch. Then know that people can't afford to buy a car, or just throw it out as a vain promise,
What is wrong when you give it a duty-free?
empty promise, right? To try and redeem a defeated party.
Young people don't need to have a car too.
Mr. Speaker, so we look at this kind of duty. Everybody will get free allowances, and the question is, how will the country afford that? So here we are, Mr. Speaker, looking at and we go to page 52, 142 paragraph.
You understand?
Because I'm yet to have heard any of them speak anything about anything in the budget.
I get a full salary for years.
Mr. Speaker, this is what the
Come talking around to this young people. I can't diss young people like that in the country.
Mr. Speaker, we are offering the young people opportunity to lift themselves up. That's what we want. In meaningful ways. Not through giveaways, but to encourage them to become productive citizens of the country. That is the difference. That is the difference. Mr. Speaker, when someone comes and has a business, there are provisions for assistance with duty-free for equipment, duty-free for vehicles, which are suitable for the business. That's already there. We engage in that already, Mr. Speaker.
I could not get duty right here, 2 cars.
So we have here on paragraph 142. Let's look a little further at a significant proposal in the budget. Mr. Speaker, this is from the budget, paragraph 142. Mr. Speaker, I say 2020 looks bright. In addition to the public sector investments, the planned private sector developments, and here is that partnership which is important for the development of any country. The planned private sector developments are set to boost growth in the economy in 2020. And the mover went on to say, I especially applaud the plans by TDC to implement the TDC Jewers Garden project, a new housing development being facilitated with the purchase of land from the government in the West Bastia area, an area which, based on all the discussion, seemed to have been neglected in terms of meaningful development. We go on further. Over the years, TDC has been known for implementing quality developments, and therefore we look forward to the full build-out of the new project. What will that project do? The project will provide, in addition to what the government is doing through NHC, will provide another type of housing for persons who want to go that route. It will provide employment as the construction takes place. Yeah. As the buildings or the housing is completed, it will add to the housing stock and therefore add to the tax base, property tax base. So this is a long-term plan for development of the country, for persons here in Kitts and Nevis. Many more opportunities, and I continue to read, Mr. Speaker, abound, and more room is available for our nationals and our businesses to step up and help to move St. Kitts and Nevis forward. That is what government and good governance and the management of the country is about. Trying to get the private sector, and sometimes I hear comments, or the private sector is the engine of growth in the economy. We hear all those cliches, but people don't believe it, because they feel that the government has its role to play. You heard from the infrastructure minister on the main road, $60-something million in road improvement. You heard of the Old Road Bay reconstruction or reclamation and protection and safety, which eluded the former government over the years. Government has its role to play, but the government is offering and looking to work in partnership with the private sector. The private sector, the engine of growth. What the government is saying is, step up, play your part. You can't lose, because as you invest and you create the investment and provide service and you provide the housing, or whatever business you're involved in, it will be down to your benefit. You can imagine TDC build 10, 15, 20 houses. From whom will TDC get the materials? It's like a nice circle. They're benefiting themselves, but they're helping to grow the economy and develop the country physically, aesthetically, for the benefit of the people. Paragraph 143. We commend several projects that have been proposed by nationals, including a new marina and residential development in the Southeast Frigate Bay area. A new marina. Yeah, we have by a local person. That is what government is about. Encourage local to invest. Take ownership of the development of this country of St. Kitts and Nevis. We have the construction of the high-end property development on the Southeast Peninsula. And there are other areas. The construction of a hotel in the northeastern area of St. Kitts. Now we have the Kittitian Hill on the northern side, the St. Paul's, the area. I'm not going to talk about the La Valley. I'm not going to talk about that on the 85 minutes. I wouldn't talk about that. I think enough has been said about that. I think the people have the picture in their mind as to what transpired. The only question is, Mr. Speaker, is to hear the limp. Well, there was no explanation because I don't think they have any. The country was taken for a ride with that project. Taken for a ride. But here is this team unity government saying to the people of this country, let us partner with the private sector. And before that, let us partner with the young people. Those who have not gotten into any business before and those who are already involved, come forward, bring your ideas so that the government can help you to make a success of the idea you have. And Mr. Speaker, the projects I spoke of, the 3 locations for development, this is what the mover said. All these projects have come from the sons and daughters of St. Kitts and Nevis. They have stepped forward to make investments in building a stronger federation. What would a stronger federation do? What would expansion of the investment do? Create more jobs. Give people more confidence in themselves. It will also, Mr. Speaker, and sometimes we don't tie the two things together, it will make more contributions for Social Security. We've talked about Social Security, the contributions. But I want to raise a matter on that. But just before I raise that, let me just finish what the government has put forward there, because I have some little defense and explanations to give before my time is up. And here what the mover says, this is our land. Christopher Harbour giveaway. When I listen and read the Christopher Harbour agreements, I wonder which legal person in St. Kitts and Nevis was involved in that, or was it just something handed to the government? Mr. Speaker, when I read the Kittitian Hill agreement and the hoops to which the government had to go through to try and redeem that project and seek to make it viable, it was not easy. And you know why? Because the wheeling and the dealing and the scheming. Maybe if the members opposite have forgotten, they should sort of renew and revisit the process to which they went to entangle the resources of this country in those two areas. I feel, Mr. Speaker, the Attorney General, who has all of the legal ramifications and entanglements, I'm sure, may want to deal with that. 144, paragraph 144. I'm just going to let people have a feel of what the budget says for the future, so that we don't let anybody leave the debate of this budget and feel that the government has not put forward constructive, positive plans and policies for the growth of this country. See what 144 says. We shall work out a special suite of support to incentivize locals to invest more in this land of their birth. So you're going to work it out to give them their incentives. So the incentives already exist, but we want to have it says a special suite. They're already entered there. The incentives package will be broad. I will include special prices on land. That's one.
Yes.
To be used for hotel and hospitality industry, and bringing development to rural areas. Specific, worked out. We can't say how much land somebody's going to want for the development, but we do know if they come and say they want to do that, they will get a special price. And we can say that investments by our nationals are just as important to us as those by foreign investors. We will ensure that there's a level playing field, because that is another question which has been raised by the OECD and the Global Forum, whether or not we are giving foreign nationals and foreign investors a greater advantage than the locals.
Our ministers and so on, government.
Mr. Speaker, I said here you have in 3-4 paragraphs, very clear, easy to understand. But as I said earlier, I do not believe that the members opposite have a grasp of what government and management of government and management of the finances and management of the other resources of the country entail. I don't think so. Otherwise we would not have heard the diatribe which we heard over the last couple of days. We never heard that. And for any prime minister, any minister of finance, to say as part of his legacy, past legacy, there ain't gonna be no more. It's done. Don't close off. You know, when you're doing accounting and you add up and you draw a double line underneath, the double line draw under labor. A double line. Finished. Closed. Books closed.
Please.
Right? For any person to say that they left liquid money and have debt, high interest debt, and do,
If that came down to 70%,
you see, you see exactly what I said. They don't understand what we're talking about.
No, you don't know what you're saying.
if that came down to 70%, it was scheduled.
Mr. Speaker,
It was finished.
Mr. Speaker,
Scheduled.
maybe if the members opposite would listen, they would learn something.
What do you have to teach?
Crumbling infrastructure.
The crumbling infrastructure we heard,
Dilapidated buildings.
and you know what really made me this evening when I listened to the Minister of Education speak about the environment. And it doesn't matter who commissioned the inspection. The fact is, nothing was done.
Correct.
That's not true.
Correct.
Absolutely
And
not.
so nothing was done.
Madam, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker,
Please.
Mr. Speaker,
You live in the money.
Please.
I have had
All over
as Minister of Labor to deal with these matters, right? Let me just say, Mr. Speaker, when I was given the opportunity to serve through the government, through this administration as Minister of Labor, and because I was involved in the administration of labor in Nevis for many years, I had to deal with issues. I remember when I had to go to the office of the Department of Labor on New Street. I think in New Street? Am I right? Up the little alley there by, yes. When I went into the building, you had crumbling roof. We had malfunctioning toilet. We had people struggling with the untidiness of the place. That the first thing I did was to say to the commissioner, this place needs cleaning.
When you told him the plain politics,
The place needs cleaning. We need to get a cleaner in here.
misrepresentation.
Go back again, place is still not improved. And I said to the staff, we're going to look for new premises to get out of this place. I'm not going to be subject
They told you they
to that kind of unclean area.
fix the whole problem.
So we moved out of there. We moved out of there. But the sad thing, Mr. Speaker, is this. One of the persons who is supposed to be a candidate for Labour, and I don't believe what I heard tonight from the minister, that those things actually existed under the Labour government, the mold, the given in a report which they commissioned. That is what is painful. You commissioned. You commissioned. So, Mr. Speaker, the Labour Department
You told him the plain politics.
lives in or utilizes a property, and we were in a way forced to go there. Forced to go there. We have people who came from other places. We have one staff member who came from another place, which we heard was infested, and we got medical report about people suffering. We go to the new place. The drawback there, which has been resolved, was that there was only in that office complex just the one bathroom, which we have already resolved. And I want to say to this house that we're looking for additional space to rent to put the staff as well, because we need to make sure that the staff is comfortable. But I cannot believe that Minister of Education, who has the most to say in this house,
5 days later on, you know more problems.
who commissioned an investigation into the properties and did nothing. 2013 to 2015, 2 years, nothing was done.
Absolutely false.
Yes.
Absolutely false.
And Mr. Speaker, it tells me something about the persons who are making those comments. Whatever it is, he hasn't worked. Whatever treatment he got hasn't worked. Hasn't worked.
Work for you, up to that, work for you. Work very well.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to read one other little piece from the budget. Mr. Speaker, the future we are building is not guaranteed,
It's a Sean lazy, man, crazy.
and we cannot assume it will happen automatically. And that is why the policies have been outlined in the budget to give clear direction. That is why it has been outlined, to give clear direction. And also to let the people of this country know that here is hope and there is opportunity for them. Mr. Speaker, so I said, Mr. Speaker, I am very happy to have been part of, to be here to support this budget. And earlier today, Mr. Speaker, I listened to the member for Nevis 11. And it's a little troubling that the minister, the member for Nevis 11, either does not know or does not care to know that in Nevis, in the last 5-6 years, that there has been significant investment in infrastructure in the island of Nevis to provide the enabling environment. And I'll say this, Mr. Speaker. In 2013, when the Concerned Citizens Movement regained the reins of government in Nevis, we had some serious challenges, none more serious than electricity. And a lot of talk about geothermal. I would not even, I did not even get up to refute anything, because let the gentleman have his play on their pet subject. Let him have his play. You know, when you have a little pet, you let him pet this pet. Electricity. All of the engines, none of those engines in 6 years service. None. It came crisis. We had to find a quick fix. We determined, with the help of the federal government, to get a 2 megawatt, as I say, a canned 2 megawatt engine as a standby arrangement, so we could begin the process of rehabilitating this federal government, 2013. No, they started in 2015. Yeah, 2013 we had a problem and we were struggling. Where are we going to go? 2015 we approached the new federal government, of which I had the pleasure to be a part, and the honor. And we were allowed, we were granted support to get a 2 megawatt engine to relieve that situation. We further approached for $5 million to acquire 4 megawatt generator, so we could supplement and have that as our base load, the 2 and the 4, while we attended to the other engines.
Things have never been better for Nevis.
And you're right, because we struggled.
Yes. Bones in check.
We struggled. And I don't understand. I don't understand when we boast about being a federation, that when one part of the federation asked for assistance, it was denied. We look at the hospital, Mr. Speaker. The hospital received significant funding. The Treasury building, which is almost complete and near commissioning. The road construction programs. The water development program. The Newcastle Police Station, assistance for that. The airport overlay, surface overlay. We had the schools rehabilitation program. to make sure the schools were up to scratch. We had also the athletic track. And I would say we had assistance with investment in geothermal. It hasn't gone the way that we would like. But there are issues there which I'm sure will be sorted out in the not too distant future. So those are some of the main projects, in addition to support for budgetary support. Mr. Speaker, it was a little unfortunate because it's either the member has no interest apart from coming to the assembly to speak here, because I don't know that I hear those kinds of things being raised in the normal course of representation. So they come and they grandstand, and when we seek to deal with the issues, they don't want to accept that what has been, in fact, is support which the federal government has given. And I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, that as a member of the federal cabinet, federal minister, we've been able to support the Nevis administration with its developmental program. Mr. Speaker, the question of the $45 million. Mr. Speaker, I really felt a little let down that you've got a budgetary allocation for 2020, and the member for Nevis 11 is seeking to preempt what will happen in 2020 with that money. That's for the Nevis administration to manage. The Nevis administration has its budget. The request for financial assistance and support transfer payment is made based on what they project and what the revenue sharing arrangement is. And last year, $30 million, this year, $45 million. And that can only be down to the benefit of the people of Nevis. I said I was a little taken aback that we were looking at a situation which the member from Nevis 11 seemed not to understand or to know what is happening in Nevis, and to see the change which is taking place physically around the country. We had talk about Social Security. I just want to look at Social Security, and then I'll go to labor, and then that should bring me to the end of my time. Questions about Social Security and Social Security being run and corruption. Let me just look at something here. The payment without proper evaluation of land at Fountain Valley. Fountain Valley? Of initially about, well, let me say the actual amount which was paid, but the agreement and the payment, the disbursement of Social Security money, and I don't know at whose order, to the proprietors or the owners of the Fountain Valley Agriculture Corporation of $14 million for undeveloped lands, inaccessible, no road, no water, no nothing. $14 million for about 100 acres of land. The payment was in December of 2014, as you're coming up to election. And we had the Boundaries Commission and the chairman of the Boundaries Commission. It seems to be, based on the document, a principle of the company. I'm not going to say there's any quid pro quo because I might get impeached. I'm not going to say that. But let the people determine that if in December of 2014, without any evaluation being done, somebody decide to instruct Social Security to pay 14, but to pay, it was higher. But in December, and we thought we'd fight it, But look at the cost. I don't know if my math is right, but 14 million and you divide that by 100 roughly. What is the per acre charge there? Somebody can help me. $140,000 for an acre of land up in Fountain Valley. No water, no road, no nothing. Gut side. I mean, how?
Where exactly?
Fountain Valley. Fountain Valley is up, somewhere up with.
Fountain Estate.
Yeah, Fountain Estate. Fountain Estate. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, up Monkey Hill, the Monkey Hill area. But there were other similar disbursements or payments. And when I had the opportunity to listen to these things, we have also Franklands, same thing. I don't mean to disrespect anybody.
So what you're trying to say, the land was sold too expensive or too cheap, or what is it? You're trying to say?
These are the kind of things. So when I hear members opposite talking about Social Security and what goes on there, it's not what goes on, It's what went on. That's the problem.
If you walk it out, it's 3,021 cents per square foot. So what are you trying to say?
But down in developed areas, you're getting $4 or $5 a square foot. You see, and this is the kind of thing, they do things that they don't even realize. Instead of leaving the matter to rest, you're going to put yourself more involved in the whole thing.
What are you trying to say? What's the point you're trying to make?
That it was a sweetheart deal. Let me tell you.
For who?
For the principle of the Fountain Valley land. Whoever that is.
Will he get land sold? He sold land for 3,021 cents per square foot? It should have been cheaper, you mean?
Mr. Speaker, I move on.
At 3,021
Because this matter, this-
didn't work out the maths.
He's buying it.
Because I don't think you know how to work out the maths.
Mr. Speaker, what I'm saying is,
You don't know how to work it out. That's your problem.
what I'm saying is that the abuse
I know you know.
of the resources of Social Security under the Labour government was rampant.
3,021
Was rampant.
You don't know what you're saying.
Was rampant. And we, Mr. Speaker, have to look seriously at the comments which were made, because those comments were clearly without any serious foundation, just calculated to throw some kind of question mark against the function of the Social Security. And when I indicated that the new CEO, the CEO who was there before left at short notice,
Everybody did. The chief was before that too. Short notice.
and the CEO
What do you think all these
and the
short-
board are under strict instruction to function in a manner which could bear scrutiny from here on in. And that is how we have to manage it, because here I have, Mr. Speaker, we talk about contributions, expenditure for operations outstripping the contributions. But we have here as delinquent contributions or contributions owing to Social Security, some $34 million. Those contributions, I'm not talking of fines and penalties, because if we added those in, it will take it to but I'll deal with the contributions alone. $34 million. And we have given instructions to the Social Security to go out and find this money, get people to pay. And whatever action has to be taken is to be taken. But what we are saying is this. Let us look at how we do business with the employers. Because they have a legal obligation having deducted or not paid the employees that money which they retain, they have a legal obligation to pay to Social Security. So what I've said to the board, on the first case of delinquency, well, we have delinquency which is outstanding, but anyone on the first case of delinquency, there's nothing called first time. You go after them. I don't want anybody's name on the radio, in the papers. We're not going that route. Call them in, sit them down, find out what their issue is, let them know what their obligation is, and let us take matters forward in a positive and decent way. I'm hoping, Mr. Speaker, that in the new year we will see changes in the way employers respond to their legal obligation. And I'm not going to say that they will be taken to court. That's a recourse which the board has. But I prefer, and I've said to the board, that you call them, work something out so that we can get the matter resolved and cut this delinquency, cut these outstanding contributions. They will determine whether or not they want to look at the fines and give them a rebate under the fines and penalties. They can do all of those things. But the contributions belong to the employees. That is their money which they have taken in trust and need to pay into the board, into the fund. So we've made some changes. We're not going to allow any willy-nilly ad hoc arrangement. Any investment which the board makes has to be done in accordance with proper processes. They must do the due diligence, they must do the analysis and the evaluation. It's not a matter of just somebody coming or giving instructions. I don't give them instructions about what they will spend or not spend. I give them instructions on how they should go about making the decision to spend the people's money which they hold and manage in trust. That is how you run stattal corporations. You give the instructions, you give the guidelines. I'm not going to be there day in, day out. That's for the work of the CEO and the board. That's their job. So we are getting things under control. So when the actual report indicates that the Social Security Fund of St. Kitts and Nevis is over $1.5 billion in reserve, that is significant. But you see, the members opposite want to look at what it says. It says the performance indicators is part of the actual report. 2017, it was $1.522 million. $1.522 billion. In 2018, the draft is 1.555. That's, you're looking at $33 million more year on end. But they're not going to look at that because they come with the recitation about corruption and mismanagement. These are the facts. It's here. This is what it says in here. And we really need to get a level of integrity and honesty in the members opposite when they're dealing with matters in this house. When you come to this house where we're producing documents, you don't come in here and talk nonsense because it is supposed to sound good, but you don't sound good. Because you're only showing up your lack of understanding of how the country functions and how it should function. Talking about a budget which is a critical aspect of giving guidance to the people. Not for us, we are part of the people, but it's the people out there. And we're going to try to bamboozle people. That is not responsible. That's not reasonable. That is irresponsible. And we need to let the people of this country know that the opposition in this House and the discuss of this budget, they were irresponsible, they showed a lack of understanding,
Yes.
and if they could just be so devoid of understanding on a simple matter like the budget, which they had time to read, didn't read it. They didn't read it. They could not have read it. But then they come in and they want to grandstand with the same old, what the member from same old.
Same old.
We heard it before,
Same.
and well, I hope we don't ever hear it again, because I don't. They should not come back to this house. None of them should come back, because the people must say, we don't want people to mislead us and to not help us to grow. Till unity government has started to get the people to grow. Boy, I voluntarily retired from my party as leader, both of government and of CCM. Don't chat stupidness in here. Don't chat stupidness here. It is my intention, it was my intention to do that, because I am not afraid of anyone. Not like number 6. Seems as if he's afraid. You don't have nobody to train. Can't train people after 5 years. Yeah? Well, I'm not worried about him, because clearly, for somebody who's supposed to be educated, what comes out in this house every time say that something is lacking. I don't know if it is a psychological problem, but something is lacking. Something is lacking. And you know, it is time, Mr. Speaker, that the senator opposite begins to demonstrate that you have gone to an institute of higher learning and ought to be able to think and speak reasonably. You need to do that, otherwise it does not do well for you. The same thing every time. Somebody sent me something there, that a little WhatsApp I got the other day, that somebody on Facebook, I'm not on Facebook, the person took it from Facebook and said they saw where somebody was having a go at the senator opposite. And they asked him in the go, do you not listen to yourself when you speak? That's the first act of somebody who is educated. You must listen when you speak, and you must think before you speak. You don't just talk because you have an opportunity to talk, and then you want to come and want to. The evidence is here. I said that you are foolish. That's what I said. That's what I said. That's what I said. Nothing more and nothing less. Because you've become overbearing in this house. And it's time that we let you know that you're overbearing, because you don't bring anything to the table. You bring nothing to the table. Nothing. Right? Talking about Social Security, the corrupt. Leaving out the important things. And come here to wallop over. Yeah? Mr. Speaker, we look at the Ministry of Labor. What do we do as a Department of Labor, Ministry of Labor? What do we do? What have we done in the last 4.5 years? We have brought a sense of cooperation and harmony in this country. A sense of harmony and cohesion in the labor place in this country. Yes, we had Lutheran close, but that was, as we explained, we did not just let Lutheran go. We sat and we talked to them and found out exactly what was their issue. And the people who worked at Lutheran, who are going to be severed, left with a very handsome settlement, and they got their severance as well. And the Department of Labor engaged in retraining those who wanted to be retrained, those who wanted to get an opportunity to get into other employment. We helped them with that. So we are active, and I made that very clear to the Commissioner and the Department, that the Department of Labor, the Ministry of Labor, is not supportive of either, is not to take sides or bias towards employer or employees. We are there to provide that guidance, legal guidance to them to get matters settled. And that's what we've been doing. And it's a pleasure when I speak with the other members of the tripartite committee, the representative of labor, representative of workers, of the employers. And their comment is they've never worked in an environment which is so conducive and so harmonious. Because the thing is, Mr. Speaker, when we get complaints, we don't wait for the complaints to blossom and blow up. Once I get a complaint, I deploy the members of staff to investigate and to talk to the program with the persons affected or who say they're affected and aggrieved, and those who aggrieve them and who affect them. And we settle matters easily. It's not that we haven't had complaints where people have been terminated, but that's another thing. We have sought to settle their claims as expeditiously as possible within the ambits of the law. And people know that they can call me and talk to me. And if they make a complaint, first thing I get, once I do that, if I'm somewhere else, I make sure I get on my little telephone and send a message right away for action to be taken. Because our concern in St. Kitts and Nevis must be for the workers, but we let the workers know that they must also have a concern for the employers. The two things must go hand in hand. And there must be that harmony and that cohesion if we are to go. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, you heard from all the ministers the success of the government for and on behalf of the people of this country. That is what is happening. Right? Someone asked about the wage. We have set up the Minimum Wage Commission, a broad-based commission representing the government, representing the employers, representing the employees, so that we can get the best. And they could, my instructions to them were to co-opt whomever you want to give you technical advice or just from the experience, whatever you want, so that we can get the best for a settlement in terms of a minimum wage. We are aware that the last minimum wage increase was in 2014. But we recognize, Mr. Speaker, that we have to look in an ongoing way at how we can address the matter of wages to make sure that the workers are not disadvantaged. That is how we function. And that is how this government functions. Our process is to make sure that the people of this country are not disadvantaged. Said we know we can't deal with every situation. People have their idiosyncrasies, they have their attitudes, and that's another thing. We've engaged in a whole lot of training with employers and employees who need the service of the Department of Labor, so that they get a better understanding of what the law says and what are their rights, what are their responsibilities. We help them to establish on-the-job collaboration, because this is something which we found was lacking. And it is paying off very, very handsomely, Mr. Speaker. So we had Lutron, we did the services and so on. Our thing, Mr. Speaker, is that we must not allow any deterioration as far as we can, as far as possible, within the labor environment in St. Kitts and Nevis. I could, Mr. Speaker, look at the ecclesiastical affairs. It may sound trite, but it is one of the important addition to seeking to have social cohesion. We are seeking to get the churches involved not as a reactive body, but as a proactive body where we ask the leaders in the church to utilize their skills as spiritual leaders, as educators, as organizers of groups within their organizations, in their church congregation, to get the people under their charge to develop new and positive attitudes. That really is the sum total. I told them I don't want only when there is a funeral, somebody get killed, that they want to offer counseling to those who are bereaved or the friends of those who have lost their lives. It's more than that. So we have that strong collaboration with the churches. We don't tell them what to do. We just ask them to do what they are commissioned to do to help the country to develop a much more peaceful and harmonious society. That is what we are doing. And we have seen the benefit of that, Mr. Speaker. I want to just move on very quickly, Mr. Speaker, to indicate that the Ministry of Labor has instituted a national consultation for employers, employees, an annual national consultation conference, and we get people from the ILO representatives to come in to be part of that. And that has been given very high recognition. And I want to say to the staff, the Permanent Secretary and the staff of the Ministry and the Department of Labor, the Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner, that these are things that we have to continue to engage in, to elevate our workers and our employers, because somebody feel because somebody is an employer or a business owner that they don't have their idiosyncrasies and their faults. Some of them do. Some of them disrespect the workers. So they want to abuse the workers. And we are saying to them, you cannot seek to abuse your workers and expect the best out of them. And likewise, the workers have to know they must have regard and respect for their job and for the persons who provide employment for them. It sounds simple, but when people have issues and they go to work and they want to adopt attitudes which can create strife in the workplace, we are trying to get them to understand that their issues must remain outside the workplace. It must remain outside the workplace. Can't take it in the workplace and want to rough up the persons who come into purchase. If they don't buy, what's going to happen to you? Who's going to pay your salary? And the same thing in public service. We have to know how to treat with the clients, with the clientele, with the customers. And we've been engaging in that kind of activity. We are not, as a Ministry of Labor, waiting for people to come with complaints. That's not our function. Our function is to guide the process for a much healthier and much more harmonious work environment. And it's working, Mr. Speaker. Something happens, we dispatch them to go and inspect. And once the senator gets a report, it has to be in writing so we can understand what is going on. They go to the workplace, to the construction sites, they go to visit the retail stores, wherever employers are and employees are, they have the legal right to go. And I know before time, I gather, that there was or seemed to have been a process that sometimes the commissioner would go do his, or the inspectors would go, and unfortunately, the commissioner would say to the employee, don't worry about it, I will fix it. There's not a name called fix it. There's a law which governs the process. And we are seeking to get the rule of law to guide the way our people behave in this country. To ensure that people know that they're entitled to decent work, they're entitled to be respected in the workplace, but they're entitled to give the best, to give a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. Those are the things that we need to get people to understand. And when we talk and hear people get into the mode of, oh, St. Kitts and Nevis is the hardest place to do business, and all of those things, it seems as if they glory in it. I don't glory in it, you know. I want to see a change. We want to see a change, and this community government wants to see a change, a positive change among our people. The entitlement that people feel. No. Have opportunity. You get exposure to education. You heard Minister talk about teachers being given and supported to do master's degrees in education.
That's not true.
We hear in the budget, and this has been the case, where people are encouraged to go off to study. The largest number of persons going off to university.
Yes.
And these are the things that we need to get our people to understand, and that is what the budget seeks to do. It's not supposed to be there like a something which you ignore, and then so you come into debate the budget. You can't ignore something which you say you're debating and say you're debating it. How does that work? That does not work. You must be able to make reference to it. And see this, is there anything I can pick a hole in, anything, and can you add? And this is the failing that we've had in this session, and the session we had last year, and the year before that. It's a failing we've had from the opposition. And Mr. Speaker, I don't have much more to say, but I said one last thing, the Public Accounts Committee. Now, a bit of advice. If one is serious about questioning the performance of government and the finances and the expenditure, have a meeting. Sit down, have a meeting, and try to determine what you will do to bring the government to heel and to account. Use the audit report. Mind they come in, they look at the audit report, you know. But they want to do the PAC over there. The explanation is right there.
Yes.
Right there. 18 of 107 pages. The over expenditure. All of it is there. And all of the reasons are given is just not a number, but it says what the over expenditure was for. If you're not satisfied, that is where the PAC comes in. The same questions you're asking, the leader asks. The same question the other members ask. How come you spend, what? $80-something million over your budget? Well, come in and have the meeting and say, listen, I need to find out who this consultant or those consultants were. Those are legitimate questions. And get on the investigation. But trying to palm off and say they don't have authority and not teeth. Well, if the law doesn't give you teeth, well, you get some falsities and bite them. Look at the thing, it's all there. It's all there, Mr. Speaker. All of it is there in the budget, in the audit report. So to come and say you don't have teeth does not make sense. Because the same questions they come and ask in the House now, that they say they're asking. The PAC could be a place within which you ask it and get and have a structured approach. Yes.
Of the situation, man.
Mr. Speaker, I said I am in support of this budget.
300%.
I am in support of this budget. You see, I said at the beginning, I don't think they understand how government work and finances work. The financial accounts allows you to have supplementary. If you have unforeseen expenditure, or even if you have an expenditure which is budgeted and you have an overrun for whatever reason, it allows you to provide a supplementary account, a request to the Ministry of Finance, who will look at it and determine whether or not it is allowable.
300% over the limit. Over the
Mr.
budget.
Speaker,
300%.
I think I have said enough to the member opposite. I have no more to say to him, but let me just finish up, Mr. Speaker. I said, I support
More in the market
this
than the person when it comes to that one.
this bill and this budget. I think I have sought to indicate to this House not just what we have done in the Ministry of Labour and with Social Security and Ecclesiastical Affairs, but to look at the budget and to put before this House as supportive, or I did read from the budget and tried to say to the people and to this House that these are positive policies, positive programs, positive approaches, reaching out to young people, reaching out to business people, reaching out to investors, local investors, foreign investors, to help grow the economy. And that once that is done, it could have the rippling effect of creating employment, generating a ripple effect through the economy. It would benefit Social Security, the flow through of contributions, and our people will not have to be looking elsewhere for work. I spoke, Mr. Speaker, about the efforts made the Ministry of Education, seeking to upgrade the skills of our people in TVET and other areas so they can have their CVQs, so that they can have their certification if they want to go to other countries. And to draw from that the Team Unity Administration has put before the people of this country sound proposals for the 2020 and the future, because it says building the future. Because once you develop your people and give them opportunity, it's not just going to be for 1 year. It will go on and on into sustainability, sustainable years. I said, what more can a government do in 4.5 years? People in this country are happy. When I walk the streets, they're happy. They tell you that. They're all right. The Alternate Lifestyle Initiative, which seemed to have stung the members opposite, because they would have preferred to have been coming in and talking about criminality and antisocial behavior. They don't have, they can't do that. That has been trumped, as they say, that has been taken off the table.
Yes.
And then to have heard, it's political.
Ridiculous.
The initiative is one which all of us must applaud. And all of us must support, Mr. Speaker.
Accountability.
So here, Mr. Speaker, I said if we were to seriously look at the budget and what it entails, how a government could, year on year, without any taxes, new taxes, have a surplus budget, surplus, be able to pay double salary back to back to back. And you know, the ridiculous thing is I heard somebody say that 2 double salary autos selling up a triple. You know, there's a kind of triteness because they think they're talking to people who don't have sense That is what is galling, you know.
Yes.
That is what is galling.
Intelligence.
To pay double salary to the people of this country, to show that there's a stimulus in the economy, and then to try and negate that and talk about all of the glib things they're going to do. No account, no. Well, I suppose they will argue that they don't have to give any account yet. But let me say to the people of this country, they come and they make the promises, they get into government, they will tell you, well, we can't do it.
That's what you are doing now.
They lose, it doesn't matter. We will carry on. We will carry on because we have a sound policy, sound plans for this country, Mr. Speaker. And I want to wish this bill safe passage through this Honourable House, and to know that the Team Unity government has done well, and the people of this country will have, well, I'm saying to them that with that kind of performance, and with the stability and the growth in the economy, and the prospects of new investment and new jobs for our people, that 5 more years plus 5 more years would be deserving for a Team Unity administration. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.